Hey guys, my name is Terry and I'm a collectibles dealer. I'm a big fan of music, but I'm not an expert. That's why we've got Johnny D.
What's up, y'all? This is Bow-Legged Lou,
Paul Anthony,
Baby Jerry,
and we are the members of
Full Force.
Force.
We just about to turn it up one or two notches in the mix with my man, Johnny D.
Hey Johnny, excited for another episode here. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I was thinking for this episode that I just throw out some names and get your reactions, hopefully get some stories. First
Yes.
one I wanted to start with is Ray Caviano.
Yeah, Ray is a legendary guy in the disco world, and he had a label called RFC, which was Raymond Francis Caviano. His brother, Bob Caviano, which is twin, used to manage Larry Levan and Studio 54. They were involved with the disco movement in a big way. And Ray had started out early with a lot of early labels, and he eventually started his own label RFC, and Warner Brothers gave him an unbelievable amount of money to come in. And when he came in, he had his whole stuff. He had a bunch of records ready to go. One of them was Luther Vandross's first hit, The Glow of Love. The album was called Change. He had this guy Gino Socio. But what happened was Warner Brothers at that time said, since we're giving him all this money, we're going to also let him help us with our other artists, Prince, Doobie Brothers, Nicolette Lawson, anything else that was around there. So he was a guy that was in a very, very pivotal position to like get involved with doing mixes of artists that regularly wouldn't have, like a Doobie Brothers or even Prince at that time. And he was in the marketing and promotion end. And just to make we'll start off a little exciting on the visual. So the Glow of Love album, which was, it's probably one of the most important disco albums. It's the album that launched Luther Vandross as well. He had done acetates. He told me he only did between 3 and 5 acetates of all of the cuts. And I'm going to show you, I'll show you a couple of the bits. So the first release was Lover's Holiday. And this is the acetate. Now, another thing about Ray, where we were, as soon as we met, we were like Italians. We love disco, but I've always been a graffiti guy, and I love like good handwriting. And Ray has beautiful handwriting. So he used to always write stuff on his acetates and test pressings. This particular one was for a guy named Billy Carroll, who was an A-list DJ in New York. Very, very big, a great guy. Ray made sure this guy got, if there was one, this guy got the one. So this was the Lover's Holiday, which was the first single. The second single was Searching. Also, you'll see Ray's handwriting on that one. And then the third single was The Glow of Love, which was the name of that self-titled album with Luther Vandross, and also has Ray's handwriting on it. Ray is a very, very powerful guy in the business. At one point, there were jokes where Mo Austin, who was the president of Warner, was leaving 75 Rock, flagging down a cab, and Ray had a limo pulling up, which was bananas. He was the dance guy, the disco guy. And another cool thing about Ray I like to bring up is years later, I wound up coming across an acetate of Prince's first, the self-titled album, which was his first hit album, But I Want to Be a Lover, I Feel For You, which was a Shaka Khan cover, Sexy Dancer, Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad. That album's filled with just arguably his best album ever, next to Purple Rain. And I wound up getting my hands on the acetate, and when I got it, I opened it up. It was untouched, and there was a press kit. And I'm looking at the outside of the jacket, and I said, that's Ray's handwriting. So I reached out to Ray immediately. I said, Ray, I came across this item. Can't believe I have it. Can you tell me? And he's kind of has the crazy brain like me where he has instant recall. He's like, there's one of those. Goes, I did one for this radio station in Detroit or wherever it was. That's the only one that was done.
So you're
And
saying that's the only acetate
only
from
one that
Prince's...
was done of the Prince, as well as that Want to Be a Lover. There was also a 10-inch acetate in that package of I Want to Be a Lover. and that was the only acetates that were done for that album and for that single.
I mean, Purple Rain is probably the album that most people would point to as Prince's most important, but his
Yes.
self-titled album has got to be up there as one of the most
Yeah,
important
I
records.
mean, the Purple Rain album is going to be, our grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren when the Rolling Stones do their top 100. Rolling Stone magazine has the top 100 albums of all time. That's going to always be in there, the Purple Rain album, which I also have the one test pressing, but that's for another podcast. But I would definitely say the self-titled album has to be his most important album, and the assets and the press kit with the picture and the bio about him is just unbelievable.
So
So
that's just to be clear. I mean, I've seen some things on social media recently, people talking about really rare Prince albums. You know, this to me just sounds like it's a whole nother level. You have the only acetate from Prince's self-titled album.
the only one with the press kit. And it's immaculate, by the way. The funny thing about acetates is, almost everybody that will speak to me about them, oh, you can't play them, they get beat up, whatever. You keep them clean, they stay clean. And I'm a germaphobe nut, so I make sure everything is perfectly clean. It's in perfect condition, pristine condition.
Well, let me also, while we're on it, I mean, I know you say it's for another episode of the podcast, but while we're here, I mean, you said that you have the only test press of Purple Rain. Is that what I
Yes.
heard you say?
Yes, the album, there was one made as far as I've never seen, and there are different indicators to know when there were more than one made. The irony is with Warner Brothers, which is where Prince is at and where RFC Ray Caviano was at the time. The Madonna is the same thing. They would do like these one with like handwritten labels and stuff, and I've been very fortunate to get my hands on the Madonna and the Prince Purple Rain. Very, very rare. Like crazy.
Those were my two first concerts ever: Prince, Purple Rain, and Madonna like a Virgin. So you're
Yeah.
speaking my language.
Those are Smithsonian pieces. Hands
Absolutely,
down. There are a
absolutely.
there are other rarities. I know you and I had seen somebody put up the early Prince 7-inch test pressing, which is a beautiful piece, but was before he was solo. It wasn't really a hit. And it's a nice piece, but I think there are about 25 of those because I've seen them pop up a couple of times.
Can I mention that Billy Carroll? We've heard that name before because wasn't Billy Carroll kind of responsible for bringing Madonna to Seymour Stein, or am I
No,
getting
no,
that
no, it was
strong?
Bobby Shaw
Bobby Shaw.
Bobby Shaw was that. Billy Carroll was this A-list DJ that a guy like Ray would say, this guy's important. And then other labels, well, that's how it was. If one promotion person in a prominent position says this guy's the guy, then that guy's the guy. And at that time, you had some bigger name people like Larry Levan and Jelly Bean, but Billy was a guy that was kind of under the radar in the mainstream, but very, very important, very influential in breaking music. Absolutely.
That's great. What a great story. So, anything else on Ray Caviano, real quick?
Um, yeah, I mean, Ray is just a guy. He's been around a long time, and he went on to later on after he left. He had RFC Records. Then after he did his thing with Warner Brothers, he actually went to Atlantic Records. He signed a bunch of stuff at Atlantic Records. Then after Atlantic, he had his own independent, which was going through quality in Canada. And then he eventually went to Prelude. Prelude Records owner Marvin Schlachter had opened the label Micmac, which was a freestyle record and a freestyle label, and he started doing promotion there. So it was kind of then he was at this label Sleeping Bag. So he has been he's been a prominent force since the beginning, from the beginning.
Micmac, that's where you met Biz Markie, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
that's true. And that's also and that owner is Marvin Schlachter, from the founder of Prelude Records, which
Wow.
was, my favorite label of all time.
Armand Van Helden.
Armand Van, I say some people say Armand Van Helden. I had met him through my friend Neil Petricone and Gary Canavo. Gary's the guy I told you was the big Star Wars guy in Massachusetts. And Neil Petricone and Gary were on a radio station called, I think it was WJMN in Boston. And I was doing promotion and they were on the radio and they were playing my records, like records I actually made, the first records I made and records I was promoting. And then Neil took Armand under his wing and was going to start a management company and said, this guy is doing records. And Armand started doing a couple of independent records. And then he and we met and we got very, very close. And he did the fifth release on Henry Street. I'm sorry, the fourth release on Henry Street. And he wound up doing another release after that. And we had a lot of success with the records on Henry Street. He had done the Tori Amos remix, which is basically, launched his career through the stratosphere. And then he had his other big record called You Don't Know Me, which was a sample of a record that my partner Nikki and I did called The Captain, John Nick. So Armand and I have there's a lot of ties together. And he's just one of the most talented guys. I mean, a lot of these big name guys don't really when you actually get into the real knowing of them, you're like, wow, this guy has an engineer or somebody that's lifting him. Armand was a guy that embraced the computer technology before almost everybody. And I would go in the studio with him, and usually somebody's doing an edit and you take a couple of times, you have to get it right. Everything he touched was perfect, perfect, perfect. It was, I don't think I've ever worked with anyone in that capacity. He's just brilliant in the studio. His brain, I love the way he digests things. He's going to take something when it comes to sampling, which most people right now, production is basically sampling other stuff. He's a brilliant mind. Brilliant.
Ahmet Ertegun.
Ahmet Ertegun, number one music man of all time.
Wow.
There's nobody even close to Ahmet Ertegun. I look back at my time in Atlantic, um, just to say that I know him. Wow, that's great. To say that I have Christmas gifts he would give me every year, cases of wine, and I still have the cards that he gave me. He had a 50th anniversary in the music business. It was for VPs and above. There was only VPs that were at that point in the company can go to this thing. His assistant personally from Mr. Ertegun, Ahmet, I would like Mr. Ertegun would love you to be there. And I was a senior director at the time. So I was there invited from Ahmet, which was mind blowing. It was Tommy Mottola and Nita Baker and just Jimmy Ivy. It was out of control. But that was unbelievable. He used to call me up and what are you doing? Why don't we go tonight to the bottom line? We're gonna go see the Crusaders. And I get there early and I go to the place I'm waiting for him and I go into the table. I'm like, yeah, I'm here with Mr. Ertegun. Oh, his table's here. There are two drinks ready for him. He has cigarettes open with the cigarettes ready with a lighter, all ready for him. Walks in. Ahmed had unbelievable amounts of hip replacements. He walked in with the cane, never wanted help. He was in the elevator with me one time he was going to lunch with the Sotheby's. There was a penny on the floor. He bent over to give it to me, tell me it was good luck. I'm like, no, 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 I got like he was that guy. He was very independent. Anyway, he comes in with his cane, he sits down next to me, and I think I really know music, and I pride myself with knowing a lot of things. And he's sitting next to me and he has his cane and he's twirling his cane and he goes, these guys didn't draw shit. And I'm like, and then as these guys are performing, he's talking about, yeah, and he's bringing up music. I have no idea what he's talking about. And that rarely happens. I mean, when I'm in a conversation musically, I'm there and this guy could just level me. So anyway, at the end of the thing, we watch these guys there and he goes, let's go backstage and, see these guys. And there was some kind of a link to Elvis. Elvis's guitarist was also there. It was some kind of craziness. So we go backstage to see these guys. It wasn't the Crusaders with Joe Sample. It was the something Crusaders, whatever they were. And we go backstage and he goes, hey man, he goes to the bass player. He goes, I dig you. I'm Ahmet Ertegun. He shake the guy almost like literally passed out. Like I was watching the guy have the out of body experience. But I mean, he'd call me in his office. Yeah, what do you think about this? And I was going through the Roberta Flack situation. um it was a little crazy because we had to get the lawyers involved. And Roberta, I love her to death, rest in peace, but she was a difficult person all around. And when I went to Ahmed and said, I really want to, we got to do something because of this Killing Me Softly that was happening with the Fugees, and she was dropped. So now he had to talk about redoing another deal, and she was very difficult. And her lawyer was Elliot. I don't know if it was Elliot Grubman. It was Elliot. It was some guy Elliot. And Ahmet, he used to wear these knit ties, and he would sit there and he would curl up the knit ties, and I go into his office and he's got a Picasso above. I mean, that was the other thing that's crazy. I go in his office all the time, and it's like Mick Jagger was in the office all the time. You look around, he founded the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so there's all kinds of stuff around there. Then there's him and Henry Kissinger, who was one of his best friends, and then Quincy Jones. And, it's Grammys, this, and the Picasso, by the way, is like above his head, just insane. But none of this stuff man, because he was larger than that. Mick Jagger at a dinner said. Mick, that Ahmet Ertegun's the coolest guy in the room. And that's a thing. That's a story that's always gone around because Ahmet really was that guy. Anyway, so we're on the phone with Elliot, and I'm feeding Ahmet what to say to this guy because I basically want to get this deal done, but Elliot's playing hardball. So I'm like, Ahmet, at this point, we're doing her a favor. And he goes, Elliot, at this point, I'm doing her a favor. I mean, I'm actually beating Ahmed. It was blow my mind. I can't say enough about him. A gentleman, a genius, and he made a comment that nobody in the music business will ever make. Everybody sits around. I did this. I did that. I'm the greatest. I have the golden ears. Somebody asked him, Mr. Ertegun, why did you sell Atlantic to Time Warner or the Warner Music Group at the time? And he said, I figured my luck had to run out sometime. And none of these people, especially at the exam, you'll never get Clive Davis to say it was luck. He's going to tell you he had golden ears. Ahmet, who had the golden ears, said, my luck's going to run out sometime. And that just showed you the person that he was. He was an absolute. When I was let go at Atlantic Records, I was gone almost 2 months. He called me to see how I was doing. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. When I met him at a party for my old boss, Craig Conlon, who was the chairman of Atlantic after, it was his birthday party, and his wife Mika was there. And Mika, they're very socialites, page 6 all day. And he said, hey, Mika, this is Johnny D. He's my little brother. And like stuff like that used to just blow my mind. He was just greatest guy. Greatest guy.
Arif Mardin.
That's your number 2 right there. That's your 1-2 punch. That's your Park Place and Boardwalk that I always talk about. Arif, Turkish Jew like Ahmet. Ahmet brought him in. Genius. Genius. You look at his discography, you look at what he's done. He had to turn down Saturday Night Fever. He had to not do it and told Barry Gibb, you can do that. How crazy is think about that for a minute. He produced Drive Talk and all those hits, Fanny Be Tender, Nights on Broadway, all that stuff. Barry come, the whole thing, Robert Stigwood. He's like, I can't do, you could do it. Basically cheered Barry on to say you can produce it. And what did Barry do after that? Barry wound up producing Barbra Streisand, Dionne Warwick, Islands in the Stream, Dolly Parton, all those hits. And that was Arif. Arif, I used to go to his house. He had an apartment in Central Park, and he'd go, we play records, and he would give me stuff, and he'd give me records, and he gave me some test presses. I still have right above me, there's a Shot Khan album with what my compliments, and he just wrote Johnny D on it. I have that right above my ceiling here. I just can't say enough about him. One of my great memories with him is there was a time when I was in Atlanta where he was still an A&R guy on staff, which was great. And they eventually let him go, which I thought was a horrible thing, but the perfect smack to Atlantic's face. And it had nothing to do with Ahmet. This was a corporate thing. They let him go. He went to Blue Note and produced Norah Jones' biggest selling album of the year. So he wound up having all of this success after he left. But while still at Atlantic, we were having an A&R meeting, and the weekend, in that weekend, I received a Shaka Khan Epiphany promo CD in the mail, and I was in my car, and there's a record called Hot Butterfly, Papillon, which Luther Vandross had covered, had recorded before under Bionic Boogie, which was, and I ironically, Ray Caviano was kind of tied to that in a promotional way. Anyway, and I was listening to it in the car, and I said, wow, I never heard these parts of the song before. The intro, I thought it was like a different song. And Arif comes in the thing, and we're talking, and he goes, John, I just received my CD of the Epiphany. Because there were elements of Hot Butterfly I don't even remember doing. And I said, I was just I've been thinking that for the last 2 days. So we had there were a lot of moments musically like that. And he produced Carly Simon, You Belong to Me, one of my favorite records of all time. And that was the one gold record that was in his room. I used to always tell his wife's name is Latifa. And I used to tell him that, I want that record. She used to tell me, come and take everything, which was kind of funny. But he was just the greatest guy. At the end, I was trying to do a Donny Hathaway box set. I wanted to have him executive produce it, have Roberta Flack do the notes. I was in touch with Donnie's kids. Want to kind of put the kibosh on it. I had 18 discs of unreleased Donny Hathaway material. It was crazy. And that never happened. But while I was sitting in one of his meetings in his house, because the way his house was, I guess he lived on one section of it, and then you went across the hall. There was this beautiful studio. It was just, right above Central Park. It was insane. And I'm sitting there, and a messenger comes and drops down a Barbra Streisand DVD and CD to Arif and Latif. Thank you, all the best, Barbara, because he had just produced Barbara's album. I'm sitting there like it. I just wanted to take the autograph, which was crazy. But just a perfect gentleman, and really, like, Ahmed and Arif, that's the one and two. You can't get better than those people. Top of the list for sure.
Funkmaster Flex.
Funkmaster Flex. His real name is Aston Taylor. So Funkmaster Flex, when he came on the scene at Hot 97, Hot wasn't really the number one hip hop station. It was like I was telling you about WPGC with the Fugees and stuff in DC with Al BD. So Funkmaster Flex was there, and he was the first hip hop guy in New York for a long time that I was like, wow, this guy's like really great, like cutting up and technically correct, knows the measures. I'm all about the technicality part. So he was very, very talented. And we met, I forgot the first time we met, but we got kind of close. And at the time he was on the station, they started saying they wanted to do a dance thing on like Wednesday nights. So I was feeding him all the records I was promoting. And it was funny to hear what he would like. So I'd say, okay, these are records that are hot. And then he would go through them and pick. And he used to pick a lot of records I made, which I always thought was so bizarre. I'm like, oh, wow, like that's connecting with Flex. But we got very, very close. I did his first mix CD at the company I was at called Sin. And he used to come to my office a lot of the time. And I used to be at Hot 97 once a week on Wednesday nights, and we would hang out. And he was, he's still a tremendous force, but he was the number one guy for a very long time in New York radio and hip hop world. And he was good. I had a drop that I had done, and he used to kill the drops. And what a drop is, for people to know, when you're on the radio and you hear, "Hi, this is whoever," and you're listening to whoever. I had one that he used to joke around, and he had a drop that said, Funk Master Flex, not the buff flavor, bounce to the beat. It was like some ridiculous thing he used to say. So I did my interpretation of that. Yo, this is Johnny D, whatever. Funk Master Flex, bounce to the beat. And he used to play it constantly. And I remember being in cabs, and I go home and there'd be like some ghetto guys next to me blasting. And all of a sudden, like my drop would come on, and I'm in the cab and I'm listening. I'm like, how crazy, like if these guys do that. It was just blew my mind. Funny thing was, he was playing it so much that my boss and his boss, who was the head of MS Broadcasting at the time, there was a lawsuit that went on, and MS had to pay, and it was all this kind of stuff. And the first thing that the guy told Flex was, "Stop playing that drop," because I was affiliated with my company Sin. So I got a good run out of it, but then it instantly, came to an end. And yeah, Flex and I, we had a very good we had a good relationship. We did a lot for each other. It was I actually started his record pool, which I believe still exists. So I know he's still making money with that. So Johnny D is the gift that keeps on giving.
Grandmaster Flash.
Grandmaster Flash, if it's funny, we're talking about these number one people and all this. You put together a nice list, and it's great. You didn't tell me about this list, so that's really cool that you're actually doing it. To me, Flash is the most important guy when it comes to, if we're going to say turntablism and DJing, whatever. There's Cool Herc. There were a lot of these stories, the Africa about all this stuff. Flash to me was the guy. We're both Capricorn, so I love that we have that together. He's just he was a guy that he somehow was able to resonate with like the white DJs. So Cool Herc, these guys were doing their thing, and that was really more like I say, if you were in the know. When Flash came on the scene for whatever reason, and I don't even say I mean, it could have been because of the Super Rapid and the early Grandmaster and the Furious, but it was bigger than that. There was something about Flash. He just instantly, I felt he just knocked barriers down. There was, I mean, racism has always existed. It's going to exist. There's prejudice. There's all this kind of stuff that it's ridiculous. I always felt like the music is colorless, but Flash was the guy that there was never a derogatory term toward him to even like the more racist DJs. Flash was a guy that just cut through, and when he did the Adventures on the Wheels of Steel. I thought that was like the most important record. I couldn't even believe to have all of that magic on a record was just mind blowing. And Flash and I met years later, and he told me a lot of the horror stories from the Sugar Hill days. I got him to sign my CD covers. I didn't have him sign my records, which looking back, I guess was kind of stupid. And I did have him do radio drops for me, which was incredible. And I played them on my station for years. That was on WKTU at the time. I've always played his drops. They were very professionally done. And after that, so many people have asked him, and he won't do them. So it's kind of cool that I think I have 12 or 13 Grandmaster Flash drops, which is really cool.
That's incredible. Bobby Shaw.
Bobby Shaw is another guy that goes back to the early days. He worked early on with Ray Caviano. He was at the Warner Brothers promotion staff, and he was the guy that brought Madonna to Seymour Stein. And very, very important guy. Then he went on after he left there, he went to MCA. He was at MCA for years. He's been doing independent promotion for years after that. He's been in the game a very long time, very powerful person, and very wired. He just, Bobby was a guy. Bobby knew the game better than anyone. And he blessed me with the Physical Attraction acetate with Burning Up on the Flip. And that was supposed to be Madonna's first record. And they flipped it to everybody. But yeah, that's a one made as well. That was a Bobby Shaw exclusive.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Todd Terry.
Todd and I got very, very close. He's had unbelievable success. He was one of the biggest people in the sampling age of house music. He's still a very prominent guy. I had got him to remix Missing Everything But the Girl, which did wonders for his career. He had gone on to then produce and remix Cher, The Cardigans, Meredith. I mean, he had done so many pop records after that. So yeah, well, we go back a very long time, and another Brooklyn guy, which was cool. And Todd was a guy, he was like you met people through Todd. Todd was always around other people. So it was like, oh, okay, yo, so oh, yo, me, everybody, like Todd was the nucleus at all times. So there were so many people I met through him, and that was a good thing about Todd. He was always in that position.
Do you have one person in particular that you remember Todd connecting you to?
Well, I'll tell you probably the most important one is Kenny Dope. And I was at a George Lamond party. George Lamond, his real name is George Garcia. He's a big freestyle artist. And in 1990, Chris Barbosa, who was his producer, was he passed away a couple of years ago, one of my favorite people ever. He produced Shannon, and I mean so many tremendous records. Yo Little Brother, a slew of hits. I was with Chris all day, and actually it was funny. That day I was with Herb Powers. It was the first time I met Herb Powers. Herb Powers was the number one engineer in all of these records, all these disco records. Like you would look in the run out and it said Herbie Jr. Herbie, I have in my book, I did a chapter of Herbie, just a list of all the bombs I didn't even list everything. I just put the bombs, and it's pages and pages. And I met Herb that day, and he was making an acetate of Bad of the Heart, and it was a gold lacquer. He took it out of the refrigerator. You saw the smoke and stuff coming off it. And Herbie was letting me look through the lens to see how the grooves are cut. So we were doing all of that. That night there was the George Lamond party, and I'm at the party, and there was a record out that Todd had done, and he had thanked a bunch of people. I was one of the people that was thanked on the thing. And I said, "Who's this record? Chrome something, who did it? Is this Kenny Dope? He goes, he's right there. So I walked over to him. I said, how you doing? I'm Johnny D. Nice to meet you. And Kenny and I became basically like brothers from that night. He was working at a record store in Brooklyn, and I was in court stenography school at the time. And we hit it off. And obviously later on he went on to do the Bucketheads, which is, still thank God, tremendous record. He did the first record on my label. So he kicked off my label for me. And the fifth release was The Bomb. Kenny and I, we've been friends a very long time. And another guy, talented beyond words, uh, very smart, the way he can put things together, and in the sampling thing and engineering sound, the way like Jimmy Iovine used to talk about Dr. Dre, like wow, like it wasn't just the rap records, it was the sonic, it was what Dre was doing sonically. I remember in the interview Jimmy was asking him like, who's engineering your records? And Dre was like, I engineer my records. Kenny's that guy. Kenny, his ear when it comes to that. And, people think it's easy. It really isn't. To have that talent, that skill when you're making these records, it makes a tremendous difference. Tremendous. So, Kenny, tremendous talent. And like I said, we were brothers for a long time. Very long time.
Narada Michael Walden.
Yeah, I mean, Narada Michael Walden is I was introduced to him. He was an artist. He was a singer in the disco days. There was a record called Tonight I'm All Right. And the album's called Dance of Life, but I always refer to it as the Tonight I'm All Right album. And I remember buying the album and I just going home and just playing it over and over again. And one day I guess I went to the bathroom and came out and there was this other cut. I Should Have Loved You. I didn't even realize it was his. It was another, it was like back to back bombs. And I loved him to death. And I was watching him over the years and I'd see his name on stuff. And he had produced Stacy Lattisaw, who is phenomenal talent on Atlantic Records, early 1979, 80, like that. She actually was on earliest. She was produced by Van McCoy, and Van McCoy was coming off of his hot streak and kind of didn't happen. And then Cotillion Records, Atlantic, put him Narada, since they signed him, they put him to produce um Stacy Lattisaw. Years later, I did the very best of Stacy Lattisaw to a Rhino, and I said, rather than just get somebody to do liner notes, I'm going to reach out to Narada directly. And Narada would tell me stories. And then he came up to the office and we met, and I had him sign a whole bunch of my albums and stuff. And years later, after we did all of that, he had just popped into the office. It was my newer office at 1296th Avenue. So he comes in, and my friend Nikki was there, and the three of us are in the room and we're talking. And now it's like, I can't believe how much you know. Like, I had asked him if he had done the string arrangements on the Tina Marie record. He's like, how do you even know that? It was some crazy conversation. Anyway, Nikki goes to the bathroom and Narada had left, and he sees an onyx ring on on the sink. So he comes in. I says, "Oh, I said maybe it was his." So he runs down the hall and he catches him. He says, goes, "Oh, thank you so much." He gave him the ring. 15 minutes later, Nara knocks on the door. He goes, "Here, I want you to have it." And he gave me the black onyx ring, which was kind of cool. So it's Nara's ring. So I kept it, obviously. But yeah, well, we still keep in touch. He did radio drops for me for my station. And legend, you look him up, Whitney Houston, Mariah. He's done tremendous records.
Tommy Musto.
Tommy's my brother. Tommy was the guy that we had met years ago. I was DJing at a club and he was producing, he was a label owner, he was a distribution owner, he was wearing a bunch of hats. And I was DJing at a club in Staten Island, and three of his acts were performing that night, and the road manager wasn't around, so he just filled in, and he used to smoke an incredible amount of pot. So I was in this DJ booth like all the way up, and this bouncer, let him up, and he bought I think it was a reel to reel at the time. I had to load the reel for the show tape. So he goes, "Can I smoke here?" I'm like, "You can do whatever you want." It was like it was like one of those like a movie theater that was converted. So I had I could have had 1,000 people up there. So he was over. He says, "Here's my card. Come by, get records, whatever." And we kind of kept in touch. And then in the mid 90s, we got very close and we were out one night and we were at a club, and I kept talking about how I felt that the house music was hitting a wall. There wasn't anything exciting. He's like, well, why don't you start your own label? Because I have distribution. I could press and distribute your records. You could be the A&R person, and we'll do it. And we shook hands. Never signed the pay. It was a handshake initially. And yeah, we had a lot of success together. And he and Silvio Tancredi, rest in peace, who was his partner, we had a good run. We were 594 Broadway in Soho, and it was a lot of great time. I'm gonna see Tommy tomorrow. I'm with Tommy all the time. One of my closest friends.
That's amazing. Okay, one more. How about L.A. Reid?
L.A. Reid is a great story. You know, when I look at the big people that influenced my life musically, as far as like that for the sound, it's Gamble and Huff, the Philly International, Jam and Lewis, who obviously came from the Prince time world, and L.A. Reid and Babyface. I always looked at like those were the three categories. And L.A. Reid had his label under Clive Davis at Arista. Clive Davis got blown out of he got blown out of it out of Arista, and they decided to put L.A. Reid in as the head guy. So now, those are big shoes to fill. And he gets in there, and I'll tell you, this is going to be a cool story because I'm going to bring a couple of things up. So I, so a friend of mine calls me and said, listen, there's going to be an opening because this guy Hosh Gorelli, Clive has taken him to do the dance remixes, and LA is very big on that because they had a lot of success with a Tony Braxton Unbreak My Heart mix, which kind of overshadowed the original version. It was like on the Grammys, the whole thing. So anyway, LA gets my information, and I have a meeting set. So I go to this meeting, and I'm in. So now this is 10 days. Clive is gone 10 days. L.A. Reid is drowning. 10 days. He's trying to put together a staff because he's getting rid of all these other people. So I look up, and Arista had just purchased Profile Records, which was a big hip hop independent record. Sony BMG was together. There was a whole bunch of weird shit going on. Profile is part of it. Now, Run DMC, the biggest thing on Profile. I'm sitting down. Run is sitting right next to me. He's also going to meet LA because I guess LA has all these meetings set up through the day. So he's in there with his collar, the whole thing. Now I'm a Run DMC maniac. Like so I gotta go up again. So I go over to him, I introduce myself, and he couldn't be more of a prick. Everything I heard about him was worse. One of the just horrible, just whatever you want to say. Just yeah, like get the fuck out of him. Like it was could give a shit. Like it was hard. And I knew DMC, and DMC is the nicest guy on the planet. So that was good. Okay, that's my introduction. So I go into this meeting. I'm with L.A. Reid, and we're talking. The meeting goes from, I'm a little bit nervous to we're joking about music. That the guy that was with me, I forgot, it was the guy who brought me in. I don't even want to mention his name because he wound up pulling a move, but he's with me. And LA's right hand, his CFO, that's going to be his CFO, is there. And I'm sitting there, and I remember telling LA, I said, I know your fade on I'm Your Baby Tonight better than you. And he looked at me and said, I do my own fades. Now, people in the music will say, how about a fade is important. Records can end cold, they get in the fade. I listened so many times, Jermaine Dupri, the worst fades ever. Like he'll fade it in the middle of whatever. The fade is important. And I just brought that up as like kind of a joke. But for him to say, no, I do my own fades, I just thought that was great. Anyway, I left the meeting with a hug. That doesn't really happen in corporate meetings. That was crazy. We had this incredible conversation. I go back to my office. Now, I have 20 months left on my Atlantic deal. So if LA really wants me at this point, he's not only going to have to give me what I want, but he's going to have to buy me out. That's how that works. He'd have to pay Atlantic either an abbreviated or the 20 months of my salary. It's crazy. And that's how they do it. So they make sure they can secure their people. Balazzoli, who was at Atlantic at the time, I was very close with, and he was a co-chairman with Ahmet. And when he found out, he's like, I don't want you to go. But if you do want to go, of course, I would never hold you to that. I would take care of it. So anyway, I go back. 3 days later, the guy who set up the meeting gives me a call. He calls my lawyer, and he said, yeah, Johnny D blew the meeting. So I'm on the phone with my lawyer. I said, blew the meeting. I says, I'm not really that guy like that's sure of himself. I said, there is no way I blew that meeting. God, we hugged you. Like we were joking about fades and Whitney Houston. Like that wasn't a regular meeting. So he So I can't believe this happened. I just can't believe that happened. A week later, I'm on a conference call, Tuesday night promotion call. My assistant calls me up and says, she comes into the meeting. She goes, L.A. Reid is on the phone for you. So I pick up the phone. He goes, what do I have to do to get you back in my office? So I says, what do you mean? He goes, could you come here tomorrow morning? I go back there. He sits down. He goes, I don't want to go through any of the bullshit. He goes, let me know how much you want. Let me know what your title is. You got the job. So now I'm very comfortable in Atlantic. I'm like from Ahmet down from the sea. I didn't have a problem in that building. Came and went as I pleased. It was an incredible thing. And I was creative. One of the big things I told LA was if you bring somebody in, I'm only reporting to you. Because you get the cock block situation. That's the worst thing you could have in a company where you need to go directly to the head and have somebody. I can't have that interference. He goes, that won't be a problem. So he was basically accommodating everything I wanted. I found out that the guy that brought me in said to LA, if you want him and the other people, you have to give me $1 million back pay for Ace of Base that I didn't get paid when I brought them to Clive. And I want this and I want that and I want this. And LA was like, are you out of your mind? And basically told him to go see where he's got to go. That guy took it upon himself to call me and 3 other people and say that we blew the deal. Anyway, after a lot of thought, I didn't take the job. And, I don't regret it because I did love Atlantic and I love my time there but there was that roll the dice. Am I going to go there? Is he going to be a tyrant? Is the whole thing going to be horrible? You don't know. I mean, you make these moves across the world for, a beautiful situation and it might not be there. So I got him a bottle of Dom Perignon. I wrote him a note. Thank you for the whole situation. I'm going to have to pass. And that's my LA Reid.
Well, those are all incredible stories. I hope you've liked listening to this, and we'll see you again soon with another episode of our YouTube channel.